Hello and welcome to What Lingers, the podcast where we uncover the questions behind people's stories. I'm Cristian Figueroa.
And I'm Liz Melchor, and we are the team behind Storytelling Lisboa, where once a month, 10 storytellers get on stage in front of 200 people and tell true and personal stories related to a theme.
It is always a great event, but there is a catch. We always have lingering questions for the storytellers and no format to ask them. Until now.
In this second season of What Lingers, we invite storytellers to revisit and listen back to their original story from that night, and then sit down with us for a conversation to uncover what lingers for us all.
Just a heads up, the recording of the story you will hear comes from the actual stage of Storytelling Lisboa, so the sound might be a little bit fuzzy.
Hello everyone, so this is our final episode of this season and it's a special one. Firstly, we are all together in person here in Lisbon, which is lovely. And secondly, our storyteller this week is Liz. So producer Jonny is joining me as a co-host.
Hi.
Hello, Jonny.
This is very exciting and it's so nice to see you in person. It's so nice to be back together. It's been a while, hey?
I know, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
No, thank you. And I have to say the story is super, super interesting. So many kind of ups and downs, but it's amazing that we're going to get to hear from Liz.
I know, right? Like Liz has so many amazing stories. She's great on stage. Her stories are very deep and well told. But this one, it's one of my favorites. And I'm really happy that she is here with us.
I am too. And I think it's going to be really interesting to find out a bit more about what inspired her to tell the story, but also a bit more about her sobriety, because I think that's a really interesting part. So, should we get into it?
Yes, please.
Let's do it. Here is Liz with her story on the theme Second Chances.
23 years old, I'm in Los Angeles at my cousin's wedding, and I'm scanning the lawn looking for a hot guy because I'm single and I'm at a wedding, but the hunt's not going well because my cousin is like this bro-y frat guy, and that's not really my style, and all the guys are bro-y frat guys. And there's one groomsman though, and I see him, he's kind of like a part, more like surfer dude. And I'm like, ooh, he's cute. But he's surrounded by the bro-y frat guys, so I sort of give up my endeavor. And I decide I'm just gonna get drunk and dance with my cousins. And so I drink and I dance, and my feet are barefoot in the grass, and I'm having an amazing time, and I'm drinking, and I'm drinking. And the next thing I remember is waking up in my hotel bed. And about this far away from me, I see a face. And it's the groomsman that I thought was so hot. And I start freaking out because this is a problem, because I had completely blacked out. I did not remember even meeting his eyes, much less talking to him, nothing about him. And so I'm super hungover, my head is pounding, I'm like trembling, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. And then he opens his eyes, and he sort of looks shocked too, and his memory is also sort of failing, and we're trying to figure it out, and I'm like in my t-shirt and underwear with this complete stranger, and he's like, oh my God, and I'm like, okay, let's start with the names. And he tells me his name, Aaron Stockton, and it does not help because I'm like, Stockton is a family name. I was at my cousin's wedding, and I'm like, oh my God, are we related? And he's like, oh my God, are we? And we figure it out really quick that we're not related, because he's not related to my cousin, and so we're all good. But then he's like, oh my God, I have a girlfriend that I live with in Tahoe. And I'm like, oh my God. And we just start freaking out, both of us, and we're just like rapid fire talking, and I'm like, alcohol's a problem. And he's like, yeah, it is. And we're staring at each other, and we just start like kind of going off on our problematic wrong direction relationship with alcohol. and it gets kind of intense. And I can see that he has like tears in his eyes. And I start to cry too, and I'm like, this is not good. Like, alcohol is not good. And it's like this strangely intimate moment, but it's also like just a crazy moment, because it's like I feel shame. I feel like I totally let myself down getting myself in this situation. I feel kind of attracted. He has a girlfriend. And then he kisses me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'm kind of into it. And then I remember the girlfriend. And I'm like, no. And I push him off of me. And that's it. He gets dressed, he leaves, we don't exchange numbers. Why would we? This is before Facebook, and you could do like the casual exchange. I mean, I guess Facebook existed, but barely. And he went back to Tahoe to his girlfriend, and I went back to San Francisco. And it took me a few more years, and I'll be really honest, it took me a few more times blacking out and waking up with strangers. Before at 26 years old, I quit drinking, for real. And now we're gonna fast forward 10 years. And over those 10 years, I was like growing up, because when you get sober, it's kind of a weird situation. You have to like learn yourself, learn how to manage feelings, learn what feelings are, learn how to be intimate with people. It's like difficult. But after about nine, almost 10 years, I was in my mid-30s, and I was feeling like solid. Still single, but I was just like happy. I was like making plans to move here, and I felt like I'd finally grown up. Took me a while. Still living in San Francisco, and one day I pick up my phone and I see a message. Aaron Stockton on Instagram, he had found me, and I open it and he says, "Hey, do you remember me from your cousin's wedding?" And I write back immediately, I'm like, "Yeah, I remember." And I'm like, I'm living in San Francisco, I'm single, I've been sober for 10 years. And the immediate message I get back is, I'm living in San Francisco too. I got divorced a couple years ago. I'm single too. And I've been sober for 8 years. Do you want to go to dinner? The next night, I walk into this restaurant and I see him. And he's exactly how I remembered him at the wedding, like from afar. And he looks good, and we hug, and I'm kind of like, this is so weird, and also kind of cool, but also I don't know. And we sit down, and we basically have a first date, totally in some weird order. And I get to know him, and I get to know what's happened in his life over the last 10 years, or no, it was like almost 13 years at that point. And he told me about being married, and he told me a lot about his father-in-law who had won a Nobel Prize, which was weird. He told me about his son who was 8, and they co-parented, and it was a great thing. He was a chef at sort of these really high-end restaurants in San Francisco, which was like exciting for me, because he was also telling me about this like chicken mole dish that he really wanted to cook for me, and I was totally in on that. And yeah, I mean, it was just like this amazing thing. And then we started he started talking about his favorite hobby, which was mountain biking. And I wasn't as into this one as I was into the cooking. And he was just like, "Oh, it's so fun. I broke my collarbone." And I was like, "Cool." And he was like, "We should do it together." And I was like, "Never." And then we started talking about that moment, that at this point, I think it was 13 years before, and that this moment had been like this intensely intimate, very brief, very odd, very uncomfortable like thing, but that it had really affected both of us. And it was sort of this amazing like bonding thing, and especially now that we both had been sober and we've been sort of like wrestling with our sobriety for a lot of our adult life. And we felt so close. And then I remembered the girlfriend, and I asked about it. I was like, oh, well, what happened with the girlfriend? And he was like, oh, I married her. And I was like, oh. And I was like, oh, so did you tell her what happened? And he was like, no, why would I ever do that? And I was like, oh, okay. And it was the one moment that I sort of was like, ooh, this didn't feel good. But I sort of pushed that aside, and as we left dinner that night, I was feeling kind of like still giddy. I was attracted, and I was like wondering, like, is he gonna kiss me, you know? And he did. He kind of pushed me against my car right before I was about to leave, and he kissed me, and I liked it. And as I drove home, I started, you kind of like replay the date, and I was like, ooh, that was fun. This is weird. I don't know, but it's kind of cool. But as I continued to drive, I sort of got this like pit in my stomach, and I wasn't feeling that good. I was kind of feeling this like uneasiness. And by the time I got home, I saw a message from him, and he was asking me out on another date. And that feeling inside of me got like really strong. Like, no, I did not want to go on another date with this person. And I started thinking about the dinner, like, why did I feel that way, And obviously the girlfriend comment was really not a good one. But the other thing was that he had been so insistent about the mountain biking. Like, it was like actually problematic. Like, I had been so insistent that I was terrified of it. I had no desire to do it. And he was like, oh, we're going to go and it's going to be great. And it was actually too much. But anyways, I listened to this feeling that I had in my belly, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to tell him I want to be friends. I wrote him that. And I got a message back almost immediately, and it was a wall of text. I do not want to be your friend. I want to date you. I want to court you. I don't need any more friends. And it went on. And the message was rageful, and it was entitled, and it was the exact sort of message, never send if somebody rejects you. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, wow, this is not how I expected the arc of me knowing Aaron Stockton to go. I didn't want it to end up like in this weird spot. But at the same time, I felt kind of confirmed. Like, I had this feeling in me like this wasn't right, and I had, said no to him. And as I thought about it more, I was like, you know what, maybe that's a nice ending to this arc, right? Because when I had met him, I could not trust myself at all. Like, I was a mess, and I didn't know how to take care of myself. And now here I was, and I was like in my mid-30s, and I knew that I could trust myself. And that was something that I had worked really, really hard to get to. A few days later, Aaron texted again. He was sorry. He did want to be my friend. He had thought it through. And I didn't really have to think about it. I just never replied. Thank you.
So we're here, we're in Lisbon, we're in my apartment, and we're on the terrace because last time we recorded together, it was Christmas and it was very cold when we were inside, and now there's a gorgeous view and there's a nice bit of breeze. Hi, Liz.
Hi.
Hi, Cristian.
Hi, Jonny.
Can I say something? It's uncomfortable for me to be in this situation, but I also think that it's good because now we've spent so much time interviewing all these other people, and now the chairs are flipped, literally, and yeah, I don't know.
I think it must be weird because obviously we're doing this partly because at the end of season 1, Cristian was the one on stage being interviewed. And actually, Cristian, we never really asked you at the time, just quickly, how was it swapping roles?
I really like it. I think it was interesting. Yeah, I'm being interviewed, and I love teaching. And I felt when we did it, it felt very educational.
It really was. It really was educational.
Yeah, and I think every storyteller that goes on stage likes to share their stories and share their lives yeah, it was really nice. I like it.
It was great. And there were some great questions. And if you didn't hear that episode, where were you? Please listen back to it because it was a great episode from the end of season 1.
So Liz, before we start, would you mind introducing yourself for everyone listening at home?
Yes, my name is Liz Melchor, and I was born in California. I was born in Palo Alto. I spent 15 years in San Francisco before I moved to Lisbon, and now I'm living in Vienna and Lisbon. I'm 43 years old. I have done everything and nothing in my life, and for a long time in my 30s, I was a writer. And when I moved to Portugal, I ended up running storytelling and telling stories on the stage. And now I primarily am working as an artist, and I draw with robots and I build robots, and I love it.
Amazing.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, we love you.
Liz, I think it's a really fascinating story. I think it's really interesting. Before we go any further, just because I don't necessarily know this description very well, how would you sum up broy frat guys?
I guess it's a very American thing, right? But specifically in this situation, and I don't think it's always like this, but this situation, it was a little bit yuppie men who were literally in fraternities, who organized their lives around drinking enormous amounts of beer and striving to make good money on Wall Street or as lawyers. So a little bit buttoned up, a little bit crass, not nerds.
Yeah.
Not
okay.
not nerds, nor like artsy, sensitive types. And also men, yes, very much like in the stereotype sort of way. And also men that would gravitate towards somebody, I think, that would be like more of a sorority girl, which is more of a traditionally feminine woman, which I don't really consider myself like.
Obviously, we know you now, but how would you sum up what you were like at 23?
School was always my happiest place. I was a nerd that didn't seem like a nerd. Like math is fun for me. And I've always been a bit I'm not super feminine. Like it's a fight to get me to wear a dress and I'm like 40. Like I still don't really want to wear a dress. So a bit tomboyish, straight cisgendered though, but yeah, artsy.
But I think in terms of your lifestyle at the time, one of the things that you mentioned a couple of times was the kind of repetitive kind of going somewhere, getting really blind drunk. Obviously, going to a wedding, there can be lots of people there. But
Life.
I suppose the subtext to that part of the story was the repetition, or at least the apparent repetition of getting to a place where you were drinking to a level which exceeded maybe other people, right? So that you were getting to a point where you were blacking out and you didn't remember what was going on. We'll talk a bit more about the guy in a minute, but how did you start to realize that was becoming more than just something that was fun? When did it start tipping over into something that you felt was a problem?
It's hard in some ways to piece it all together, but I drank a fair amount. I drank almost every day since I was like 16, or there were periods where I wouldn't drink for a few months and stuff like that. But I was drinking very regularly from around like 16 years old. And in college, I don't think there were 2 straight days that I did not have a drink of alcohol. So I drank very regularly, but I also had a high tolerance. Like my body loved alcohol. I feel great when I drink, or I did. You know what I'm saying? I remember the first drink I ever had in my life, and it felt so good, so amazing. And I also had a really high tolerance. I almost never threw up. I black out. I wish I threw up because it would have stopped me. But yeah, so I think this was like an interesting age, right? I was 23. I was just coming out of college. In college, it felt like everyone was drinking on my level. That wasn't true, but that's what it felt like. And as we got out of college and people started getting careers and stuff like that, there were some waves of sort of slowdowns and people were starting to slow down. And that was not something that was naturally happening for me. And I was starting to realize at this moment in time that like, oh, wait, this isn't good. And the other thing is like blacking out is actually a profoundly scary experience. You guys, at this wedding, I literally I don't even remember talking to him, like looking at him, being being near him.
Yeah.
I only remember seeing him across the room as a stranger. And then I'm in bed like a foot away from him. And that's crazy. And that was starting to happen to me like a bit more and more. And it's a really scary thing. But to be honest, it took a while. It wasn't like I blacked out once and I was like, okay, now I know I have to give this up, because I love drinking, and drinking felt very good to me. It was very soothing. And I Yeah. And so when you love something so much, it's almost, I think, like a abusive relationship, maybe in some ways. It's like I was very attached to alcohol. And so there were negative consequences, but for a while, it felt like the positive consequences outweighed the negative.
Would you mind bringing like a picture of how were you like before this wedding? Of course, you were 23, but you've been drinking since 16. And what were you trying to soothe? Probably with the alcohol, or what was the relationship? I know alcohol is very common in teenagers, in teenage age, but you were probably having a different behavior from your peers as you were like going in different paths. So what was your path when you were 16 and until 23?
I think in some ways I never saw it as different than just I'm a kid who parties. And I was also a kid who partied, who performed well in school. Like I wasn't doing badly in school and partying. I was like a rebel that you couldn't tell that I was a rebel, or I wasn't really a rebel. I was like, I just drank a lot, but I was able to manage everything. So I never felt different than my peers. But once you get sober and you realize, oh wait, alcohol was a really big deal for me and it was really hard to give it up. It's like you look back and you put it together. And there's a really good book I read. It was called something like Alcoholism as an Attachment Disorder.
Okay.
And essentially it was talking about addiction. And I really think that this is a good sort of way of looking at it. It was talking about addiction as these substances become like your primary attachment figure. It was giving me what an attachment figure should give you in a secure, nice attachment situation, which is it soothed me. It made me feel not alone. It made me able to manage my feelings when they were really difficult. And it was just like, I didn't have that in my life from my parental figures. And I'd gone to boarding school really early. And I'd always felt a bit removed from the world. And I just never, that sort of soothing that I felt with alcohol, I never felt it from a person. And it's like when you become a teenager and life gets more complicated, your desires are more complicated, you start getting male attention that can sometimes be just too much or overwhelming. It's just all teenager things. You can be nervous and lack confidence. It was like alcohol was my solution. It was like, okay, alcohol makes me feel confident, makes me feel happy. It makes me feel like I'm having fun. If I'm sad, it feels like a blanket. And so I really think of it like that. It soothed me.
Well, I think what's fascinating about this, though, for me, just after what you've said about the fact that you loved it, the friend that I have who has been out sober for now, it's almost 2 years, but it was an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. And it was very much a kind of would drink a bottle of whiskey in the morning most days, and actually would be quite functionable. You would never really know. But it became something that really, the difference, and correct me wrong here, but the difference was that it really affected his mental health. So there was really big times where he could associate severe amount of drinking with a real severe amount of depression. And I think what's interesting about what you've said thus far is there didn't seem to be a side of this that was affecting you mentally, or was there?
There absolutely was this other part, which was like, at 23, I was really depressed because also I loved school. And I had just left school and I was devastated by leaving school. I'm not even kidding you. I can't. It was really like this really difficult transition for me. But anyways, but I was very depressed. I felt very stuck. I didn't know what to do. I felt isolated. Yes, because of all these things that alcohol had done to me, but I didn't see it like that at that time.
But wasn't necessarily a direct result of alcohol itself, a physical reaction to it necessarily? Do you see that correlation?
One, because the thing is, I thought I was a very anxious person and I thought I had very high anxiety. Okay, once I got sober, once I took out alcohol, I'm like, oh wait, I'm not that anxious. So you get yourself into this cycle of drinking hungover. And it's like you calm your nervous system with alcohol or depress it. And then you get like wiry and jittery and you just need it. And so you're all over the place. It's like a stress. And then depression and all of that. I don't know. But I think the thing that's even more significant, and that was something I didn't understand till I was sober for a little bit of time, is that like I was actively at that point in my life, like trying to fix my problems. I was like going to therapy and I was like, what's wrong with me? I don't feel right. Like something's wrong. And I felt totally stuck. And I would go there every week and nothing was changing. And
this is while you were still drinking?
This is while I'm still drinking. And like at some point, my therapist basically pushed me and was like, yo, you got to give up the alcohol and see what happens. And once I gave up the alcohol, then it was like, oh, wait, now therapy works. Now I can grow. Now I can figure it out. Because alcohol, just like I think most drugs of abuse, they stunt you. They keep you stuck because you're not feeling your feelings. I think the only way to grow connect with yourself, all of those things, is you need to feel your feelings fully. And alcohol impedes that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's super fascinating. I think that it's really interesting that you're already on a journey of self-discovery and growth through therapy, because that was going to be my next question, is what was the catalyst to actually giving up properly? Like, it was therapy, essentially. Like the idea that you would stop and you wouldn't go back to it.
Yeah, I'm trying, because it's always one of those things, right, where it's like you try and think, was there a moment?
Yeah.
And I think it's so hard to pick a moment. And a lot of people, they have stories where it's, I hit rock bottom. Like I blacked out and ended up on the other side of town. And this was my wake up call or whatever happened. And that happened to me, but that was not my wake up call. But I actually think if I look back, I'm just thinking, I'll send this to my former therapist, this podcast.
Worked.
But I actually think what happened is I found a therapist at this time of my life, and I really connected with my therapist on just a very like visceral level, like intellectual level. Like I felt very seen by her.
Mm-hmm.
I really like to go back to this book about alcoholism as an attachment disorder. Is in some ways I had a new attachment figure. So I could risk taking away alcohol because I had this other attachment there to soothe me, to be there when I was like breaking. And she pushed me one day. And for some reason, that was like the thing. And I think I even think I tried a couple of times before it worked. So she pushed me a couple of times. The big thing is related to another story I've told. And the big catalyst was, okay, so I have my therapist as one attachment figure. And then I got a dog. And my dog was named Turtle, and he was the best. I'll probably start crying, but he was the best. And I got a dog, and I got him in July. And by September 26th is my sobriety date. And so I had him for that time. And I was like, and when you have a dog, it's like I had to learn I was not good at taking care of myself. I had to learn to take care of him, feed him, be there for him, come home at regular hours, like just be there for my dog. And then my dog was there for me. And this was enough of a catalyst. I was like, I can do this. Because I needed something. You need like a transitional object when you get sober, because you're giving up like the thing that is there for you. I was giving up my great love, alcohol. It's really hard to do.
Yeah. And pets are such loving animals. Like they're always there. They're really healers. I do believe that they come to heal you or help you to process something you need to do. We are talking about the story itself. It really sounds like this was a butterfly effect on both of you. You both woke up like blackout, probably none of you remember. And then you got sober like in the next couple of years. And then you met 10 years later. And I have a hard time relating with the blackout because I never had a blackout in my life.
Also normal. Most people don't black out.
So I don't really understand what you mean by blackout. Do you mean like you just
don't remember
lose
anything?
Consciousness? It's like
no, that's the scariest part. If I lost consciousness, that's one thing. But no, I'm still moving through the world. Yeah. And I don't think I'm functioning. It's like sometimes when you see people that are really drunk, they're probably blacked out. They're not going to remember. Once I blacked out in San Francisco, and I remember being at a party in one neighborhood, and I woke up in a totally another neighborhood across town. That's scary. In a house that I didn't know. So it's like I'm functioning. I'm moving through the world.
Yeah, like you're getting cars to get home.
Yes,
you're arriving home and you don't know how.
Yes.
That happens.
Having conversations I don't remember.
Yeah, but I have been drunk where there's things I don't remember from the night before.
No, yeah. And it's not.
I think there's levels, but
yeah,
I guess this is.
I think there's like brownout where it's like you had a conversation. I don't remember like what I remember being there, but I don't remember the content. Yeah. But then there's like this other level, which is just blackout, which is like after a certain moment of the night, I do not remember a single thing.
This whole period where this was happening quite regularly, how well kept a secret was that from friends and family? Was it kind of like no one really saw that there was a problem there, or actually were you just very good at hiding it?
I think it was like I was surrounded by people that were drinking a lot, and I was usually drinking in acceptable situations to drink.
Yeah.
So I was like at parties. I never got to that point where I'm like secretly like putting vodka in my orange juice breakfast. I had no limits, and it would be on my mind. Like I would stay at a party to get more drunk, not because I was enjoying the party. But I don't know. No one ever called me on it. I got sober at 26. So I think there was a way in which I was young enough to like get away with it. Also, my tolerance level for alcohol is really high. So basically, until I'm blacked out, I think I was pretty good at functioning at a level that I was really drunk, but you wouldn't have known. This is not good. If you have this ability to tolerate alcohol at this very high level, your likelihood of having it be an addiction is higher. So
but the butterfly effect that you both had, like this change, but also the feelings of being like this scary moment of waking up in front of someone that you just don't remember anything. And there is this whole complex thing. This person has a girlfriend and you like him, and it's like weird. It's just like so many levels of weirdness and anxiety and triggers that I cannot even imagine for you. But 10 years later, this guy texts you.
Yeah.
And were you able to ask him at some point, like, why did he quote you again? Why did he get back at you?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, like, this guy is divorced with a child, sober. And then one day he wakes up and he's just, I'm going to text this girl I hooked up 10 years ago and see what's happening.
Yeah.
Maybe because he moved to San Francisco.
I don't remember him saying like exactly why he felt like reaching out or whatever, but I do remember that we talked about this, that we had like in that bed. And because that's the thing, that morning was so complicated because it was like shame, fear, like deep shame. Blackout is just like the worst shame because you're like, what the fuck happened? What happened between me and this? What did I say to this guy? But then also I'm like, wait, this is the hot guy. This is the guy that I'm attracted to. Oh, wait, now he's in my bed.
But do you think you had sex with him? Do you think that happened?
I'm actually 100% positive that, I'm not 100, like 99% positive that actually nothing physical happened. I could feel it. But also because he said, I think he had he hadn't blacked out as much as me. Like he had a little bit more memory. He was like more browned out.
Mm-hmm.
But also in that morning, like we both started crying.
Yeah.
Like actually crying. And I think also at that point in my life, I was somebody who hadn't been very open. I wasn't very connected to my own feelings, period. So I wasn't somebody that was like used to crying in front of other people or like sharing emotional intimacy, let's say. And we shared this emotionally intimate moment without knowing each other and in the blanket of shame and all of this stuff. And also it was like really one of the first times where I was like, oh wait, alcohol is actually a problem. Like this isn't partying. This isn't fun partying of kids. Like this is like something serious. And it was like, I was almost like realizing that in real time and out loud with a witness.
And this leads me on to a question that I had watching the story, listening to the story. There's a point you say in the story on stage, you go, and he reached out and he was like, can you meet me for dinner? And then what we didn't get, which I would have thought we would have got, is, okay, what were you thinking? You got that text, and the next thing you say in your story is, so I rocked up for dinner the next day, and I was like, whoa, what the hell happened in between you getting the message and you thinking, okay, I'm going to go? Because there must have been something in you that went, should I go? Should I not go? Like, what was going through your head when you got the message, and why did you decide to go? Because that was not in the story.
First of all, my first reaction was no fucking way. And my second reaction was like, yeah, fuck yeah. Because the thing is, that moment, and this is where I was getting to before, that moment lingered in my mind. Because that was a really powerful moment in my life, and I will not forget it. And even now, it's like I was very young, and like that's 20 years ago now. I still remember I remember that whole little scene very vividly. And it was meaningful for him too. And I think both related to our sobriety and this just strange connection. And so I'm like, oh wait, and now I get a chance to reconnect. And and I think now looking back, like I had this idea of, look, I'm really into, I was a writer. I'm really into, I run storytelling. It's like, I like stories. Like no matter what, I knew this was a good story, right? Absolutely. And I'm always like, and I'm like, okay. So if you think about it in like story structure, it's like the story opened then and it never finished. It was like, we shared this moment and then what? And then I never talked to him again, never looked him up.
You referenced the fact that you kissed, that you liked the interplay between the two. So there was that element of danger that clearly turned you on.
It was a powerful moment, and I didn't know how I felt about him in some way. He didn't have so much agency in it. I just it had been a moment. I'd felt some sort of connection. But the thing is, I hadn't thought about him.
No, of course not.
I think I'd thought about that moment more than him. And I didn't. In the next days after that happened, I think one way of dealing with blacking out and stuff is you're just like, okay, I'm going to choose to just forget about that situation.
Yeah, exactly. And drink it.
It's like shame.
I'm going to drink it out.
Exactly. It's like, okay, where's the next beer?
Cheers. Yeah.
Yeah, the shame cycle of alcoholism.
But still, you ultimately decided to go for dinner.
Yeah,
like, there was nothing in the story about what made you decide. So you went to go for dinner and you met him. And how did it feel when you sat down? Like, how did it feel? It must have felt weird, but was it a good weird?
Yeah, it was great. To me, I thought it was amazing. I thought, whoa, what is this? Like, now 10 years later, and now I'm a different person, but now I'm the person I wish I had been. And it was at a point in my life where I felt really free. I'd also, this isn't in the story, but I had a boyfriend until maybe like a few days before I went on this date.
Okay.
And so it was like the text rolled in maybe like after my boyfriend and I had broken up like the night before.
That's spooky.
That kind of stuff used to happen to me all the time.
That's so spooky.
Plugged in. Yeah. That kind of stuff would happen to me all the time. Like that weird timing stuff. So
God.
it was like I'd broken up with the boyfriend, but it was like one of those situations where it was like on and off again. So we'd break up and then get back together. And so I had, and it was like, and the boyfriend before never cooked me dinner and I'd asked him to cook me dinner. So then the guy's like a chef, silly things like this. But yeah, no, I mean, I was really open and I thought, yeah, we shared a connective moment, like what happens now.
Yeah. I love it because also I think if it was me, I would be like, I've got nothing to lose. If I don't go and see him for dinner, I'll always be wondering, like, what would he been like? Like, what would the conversation have been? Like, so interesting to see how it was. I think we obviously need to touch on the mountain biking because there's something very triggering to you about mountain biking in the context of the date.
It's a huge red. It was because I think
I can't get this.
No, I get it. I get why you don't get it.
It feels quite judgy after one date because I get it. To me, if I was on a date with a guy and he's really into mountain biking, I would be honest, like you, I'm not a massive fan, but it wouldn't put me off seeing him again.
No, and I totally understand. And I think it was hard for me to understand in the moment. It took me like the drive home to digest it. And I understand how it's hard for me to explain it in the story, why it was such a red flag ultimately, and like why it just made me like completely put off. But it wasn't that it was, okay, he was really into mountain biking. Cool, dude. I'm all about do your passion, be your thing. I'm like, do it. That wasn't the problem. I love hearing about that kind of stuff. But the problem was that he kept telling me that we were going to go and that we were going to have fun. And if you're going to tell me that the first time, great. But when I tell you, no, that's not for me, and you insist more than
Correct.
if you insist, and he insisted, it was excessive. Like he insisted like 6 times. And it was like he was also it was like he was during the date at some point like talking about our collective future.
Yeah.
And our collective future was like based on the model of his obsessions, where we're going to do this and you're going to love it. And I'm like, no, but I'm not. Like, hi, do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Can you listen and be responsive to me? If he had been like, oh yeah, it like mountain biking can be scary. I totally get not being into it. I just love it. That's a totally different thing than what he did, which was he was like bulldozing me with his passion and like fitting me into his passion. I don't know, because I've been on many dates in my life, it's like you start to see patterns, and this is like a type where I'm like, yo, dude, are you listening to who I am? It's a red flag. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it is, definitely. But also, the other thing I noticed in the story, you used a word, it stood out to me when you mentioned when he kissed you and he pushed you against your car. And to me, that can be interpreted in one or two ways. It could be like, oh God, a super romantic moment. Or it could also be perceived as someone who likes to be fairly possessive or semi-aggressive. And I feel, does that correlate to what you've just said about because essentially there is a kind of potential theme between his physical kind of wants to be in control.
Totally. And in some ways, I don't know, because I just have one other data point. And I think what happened was he pushed me against, there was like a roughness to him pushing me against the car that, to be honest, in the moment I was into. I appreciated, there was almost like this confident swagger that he had. He was like shorter and I don't know, but he had this, I liked it in the moment. As I drove home, in my body and not in an intellectual way, I had this feeling of no. And I think that as I've gotten older or whatever, it's like I've learned very much to listen to that. Also, I got sober, and I feel like a lot of sobriety was just like learning to listen, like tune into myself. And so it's like, I just felt this feeling of no. And so in some ways I felt this feeling of no and I went with it. And now I'm trying to give reasons for it. And maybe the reasons are something, whatever, like I believe the mountain bike thing and all this stuff, but it's like the reason that I said no is because I felt it in my body, and I trust that. And I trust that. And I think your body like picks up on lots of things that you're intellectually, you might not.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I'm not even saying he's like a really bad guy, but he was just not for me. And I knew it so viscerally.
What's the process of you getting in touch with your body and your emotions? Like, of course, it's a process. Again, it's difficult to say, oh, now I'm graduated from feeling my body and my process. But yeah, you started therapy, of course. You went in, there are practices, places, or things that you would do just to be aware of that. Because what you just said is so important. I think that just listening to our body, it gives so much information that we normally miss. We lie to ourselves and it's, no, everything is fine. And your body is like crunching or contracting. And no, this is okay. And I think nowadays a big part of becoming a better humanity or society is getting back to our bodies and feeling what we're feeling and just get to know that. And it's really amazing for me that you felt that in the car, and when he sent you the message was like a big no, and that's like your body telling you that. Would you mind like sharing a little bit of that journey of going back from being like alcoholic to into your body?
So first, it's like, I feel like alcohol does this thing where it like numbs your body. And when I got sober, I felt completely disconnected from my body. I also realized I didn't know what feelings were. Like, of course, I intellectually understood them. But when my therapist is there and being like, how did you feel about this? I didn't have the language. I didn't get it. Thinking back on it is so weird. I think tuning into my body, first, you got to remove the substance that's dulling everything, like alcohol, and then feeling all the things. I think my body, I've always been one prone to lots of feelings, and which helps, which is why you want the alcohol, because when you have lots of feelings, it's too much. So I think, but I really think it was mainly in therapy. And it was like, honestly, my therapist just like directing me, like, how does that feel in your body? It was such a long process. And it got to the point where I could give language to a lot of feelings in my body. If I felt something, I knew what it meant, and like layers of complexity. Like in that, I can talk now about how I felt that morning when I was 23, waking up, like ashamed, attracted, connected, horrified, like all of that. But I didn't have anywhere near that language to do that then. And then also, I think the big thing that I try and end the story with is just like the trust, because it's like I felt that, and like I didn't even need to fully understand it, just to be like, okay, I'm going to just trust that. I'm going to trust my own gut feelings. And if I look back at my life when I'm younger, I think women are especially conditioned to override their gut, to be polite, to be nice. And it can get them into tough situations. And that friction of going against your gut is brutal.
Can we take a moment to praise the work of your therapists and all the therapists around the world for doing their work and helping people to do?
Dude, and my therapist was a magic person.
Absolutely.
I've never told a story about my therapist on stage, but one day it's hard, because what would the story be? It's hard, but she was a magic person. But more important than I think even that is like we were a magic fit. I think therapy is so much about fit.
Absolutely. 100%.
Totally.
You have to find the right one for you.
But also what's amazing, what's really inspiring, I think, is like this, the fact you're already on a journey of discovery and doing therapy, even at the point where you were still drinking, like that's really unusual. I would say that usually we all, I mean, in my experience, not necessarily through drinking, but through my mental health journey, finding a therapist came as a result of feeling utter shit. It's like I was in a really low point and then I was like, I really feel like I need help. Whereas
I had that. With alcohol.
Yeah, you did. But my point is, you were doing therapy. So you're right. So you had other things that were problematic. You were having therapy, but actually it was really interesting that you were able to also drink at the same time with a therapist that then pushed you in the right direction, which is really amazing. Just on the subject of people's reactions to drinking, there was a moment where Liz goes, and then I became sober, and then the audience just gave a massive round of applause.
At the very beginning of the story, I start the story and I'm like, I'm in the grass and I'm getting drunk. And there's like around, I think it was louder for me because when rehearing it wasn't that loud. But at some point I'm like, I'm drinking and I'm getting drunk. And there's like, oh, woohoo. Whoop. Yeah. And I remember being on stage thinking to myself, oh, there's a turn coming, guys. And I remember that And like when I tell a story, I want to tell a story from, in some ways, the real-time position. So my real-time position was like, that was really fun. Even looking back, like that was fun until I blacked out. And so for me, what was interesting was I had that reaction. And I was like, oh, guys, the turn's coming. And then when I built myself to my sobriety, I'll be honest, I've told people I'm sober on stage before and they clap. And I remember actually in this one, and listening back, I can hear it too. I say I'm sober and I paused. I waited. I actually think I had to wait longer than I expected. So in some ways, I asked for it. I'll be really honest. I asked for their response. I think I remember even looking at them like, no, you guys applause for me getting drunk. Now you're going to applause for me getting sober.
To be fair, I think there was like one person already like applauding. And then you were waiting for the other people to start clapping with that one person.
I really was. But also, I do want to say something else. I remember feeling this, like getting sober and stuff in my 20s and 30s. There are a lot of milestones that society celebrates: marriage, career, and these are baby showers, and you go and you celebrate them outwardly.
Yeah.
And I got sober, and nobody, even to this day, like, this was a very hard thing for me. No one knows how hard it was. No one knows how alone I felt in it. And my dog, it's like, Turtle. But like, no one knows, and no one really congratulates you. There was no party.
Yeah.
I didn't get sober in AA. I didn't go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I think Alcoholics Anonymous is an amazing place. It wasn't for me. Alcoholics Anonymous does a great thing of celebrating sobriety within a community.
Yeah.
But like, outwardly, it's all these people around me were like hitting external milestones.
Yeah.
And I was working like internally. I was doing, my work was internal growth. And like, I'm going to tell, like, that's not, nobody sees it. Nobody is celebrating it. And it ends up paying off, but it was slow and
That's
like
hard.
lonely
That's really
and
hard.
all of these things. So you can give me claps on the stage.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take it. You know what I mean? And also, and I think sobriety for everybody is such a different trial. And also, yeah. And when I say sober, it's like, I got sober, I connected to myself, I felt my feelings, I learned how to tolerate it, how to deal with my anxiety, how to become, like, I used alcohol to be confident and like to talk to people. I had to learn how to like literally talk to people.
Yeah.
I had to learn the basics because I had used alcohol. It's like I had to force myself into discomfort many times for a decade until finally I felt like, okay.
Yeah. I think it is incredible.
Indeed. And just to finish that idea of the clapping or not, also, yes, we are in a society that celebrates crazy things like alcohol, that it's a drug that is legalized and everyone is killing themselves.
And a
But,
bad drug.
It is a bad drug, yeah.
Yeah.
But
There's
also,
really negative consequences from alcohol for
Exactly.
everybody.
People are-
Homicide, suicide,
Exactly.
automobile accidents. It's a dangerous drug that's very normalized.
And what happened on September 26th?
My day of sobriety,
Yeah.
but it just ended up being the day.
Do
It
you
was just-
remember? That
I
you-
don't.
It was like, this is the day I'm going to stop, or something happened that week or that month?
No, that's the thing. It would be a hard story to tell because there's never a turning moment. It's
Okay.
not crystallized into a moment. But it's like, I had Turtle already. I'm looking at this little like being. He's so freaking cute. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. For some reason, it clicked. You know?
Clicked.
Sometimes in AA, they talk about like almost like this, it being really a spiritual moment. I think in some ways that would explain it best. Like, it's just at some moment I gave up. You give up. Because for a long time I think I was trying to figure out a way to have alcohol in my life and like it not be destructive. And I didn't realize all the ways it was being destructive, but I tried to moderate alcohol. I tried to drink less for a long time.
Okay.
And so then I just gave up and I'm like, okay, I commit.
And how has it affected you, like, now, looking back since then? Like,
Yeah.
this many years on, basically being sober, like,
17 years.
yeah.
Man.
Which
Crazy,
really,
right?
I mean, that's what I'm applauding, because that is amazing. No, seriously, because I think that obviously the first step is to stop, but actually the hardest step must be to stay not doing it. Did you have moments where you relapsed, or was there times where you
I
struggled?
relapsed 1 month after my sobriety date. Halloween, I relapsed. But then,
of course.
I don't know, it was like the next day I didn't. So I kept my original sobriety date because it felt like my date.
Yeah.
And then I never drank
Right.
again.
And has that been difficult?
Profoundly difficult. Like the first 5 years, it was very hard, to be honest. But about, I don't know, at 10 years, it became really normal for me. And I almost forget because now it's been so long. And also, it's like at some point, I stopped doing like the internal work. Like I needed to do internal work to stay sober. That was the thing, right? But then I got to a point where I had done it. Like I know myself.
Yeah.
I trust
yeah.
myself. Oh, wait, alcohol made me like confident and fun at parties. Like I think I can be confident and fun at parties now.
100%.
And like I'm as a sober person. And then I can and I have more choice. Like I can choose to turn it on. I can choose to leave. And so around like 10 years, I got a tattoo, like 10 dots for my 10 years of sobriety. And in some ways, it was like closing a chapter because from that point on, I became more externally focused. I stopped going to therapy at some point. Like I don't know, I moved here and sobriety is like very cultural.
Yeah.
I learned like it's very
Totally.
American, like all these ideas. And so here people don't really understand it, but it just didn't bother me that much. And I don't notice and I forget my sobriety date. I have one friend, Melissa, she texts me on my sobriety date and almost every year I forget until she texts me. I forgot, but it was a really hard thing for me for a long time. And now it's like I'm solid in it. But yes, it was not easy. But I think about it like this. You can give up something as a negative thing or you can give it up in search of something positive. I gave up alcohol, and that means I'm present in my life like 100% of the time. And that sucks in some ways because it's really hard. But I do think it's a spiritual choice. Like, I'm choosing to be present in this one life that I have. And so I'm choosing life. The thing is, when you drink like I drank, everybody around me drank as well. My friends were people that would drink with me, that would support me drinking, that were also probably having some problematic relationships with alcohol. So actually, one of the hard things was actually really that I didn't have, it wasn't that I didn't have supportive people, but I didn't have people. And I tried to get into AA, but I couldn't find the right people even in AA. So that was hard. But then what you end up learning is I really thought the whole world drank, because everybody I knew drank and drank a lot. And what you learn as you're sober for longer and longer is you're like, oh my God, there's like a whole extremely large subset of people that barely drink, can take it or leave it. To this day, it marvels me that somebody can have a glass of wine at dinner and leave half the glass on the table. Do not understand that. And like those people like baffle me, but they exist, and they exist in droves. And then once you end up like hanging out with sober, it's like, I don't go to bars. I don't need to go to a bar. Why am I going to go to a bar? A bar's not fun if you're sober. I was really into CrossFit in my 30s. Like, I'd rather go to CrossFit and go to brunch and eat avocados and like protein shakes or something.
In that order.
And there's like a whole world of socializing that doesn't involve substances. And you don't even realize it exists.
I love that though.
They're different bubbles. When Liz told me her story the first time, we made this video for storytelling to introduce herself, and she was like, I'm sober since I was 26. And I was like, I actually started drinking when I was 26 because I was in Brazil and I used to drink a little bit, but not much in college or in Colombia. But when I moved to Brazil, it's so cultural. Everyone is drinking all the time. I have to start drinking because otherwise it's like everyone, like the UK, like, are you sick? Are you taking meds? Are you taking antibiotics?
Exactly.
Why are you not drinking? It's like so weird. So I actually started drinking, but just, of course, like not at the level. So yeah, it's very difficult.
Let's get back to the story as we head towards wrapping up. It's really funny. I was watching it before we watched it together, and I was like, it felt like a full cycle moment. The idea that you were sitting down with him and actually a lot had changed in that time. But I wonder subconsciously, do you think that's partly why you did go to see him for dinner? Because you were like, actually, I want to be able to prove to myself and to him, but more to you, that actually you really had found a way of being able to trust yourself and live in a better way. Did you want to see him in that to reassert that, do you think?
I think here we'll get into storytelling, like the art of storytelling.
Oh, just so listeners know, she's taken the hairband out, the hair's fully out.
And I'm ready.
She's
ready.
Stand by.
No, but I would have said yes to that dinner. Like, I'm the kind of person that was like I say yes to things because, and I'm very curious. And that was like the most ultimate curious thing. Of course, you want to see. Even if I had negative feelings, I would have said yes. And in some ways, I tell this story. I remember somebody telling me afterwards, oh my God, I didn't know if you guys were going to ride off into the sunset at the end. Because that would be the full circle moment of that story, I think, in some ways. Like,
the expected
that
one,
we come and we had that moment, and then that moment means that we're destined for each other. And we're destined. That was the thing. When I got that message, I felt, oh, maybe this is destiny. But then I felt it in my body. This is not destiny. But yeah, and so you think there's going to be a full circle, but it wasn't apparent. So the story theme came up, second chances, and I hadn't forgotten the story, to be honest. And then the theme was so on the nose that I was like, oh, wait. And it just popped in my head, oh my God, this is such a wild story. And so then I was like working on it, and I was like, wait, how do I end it? That's always when you tell a story, you're always like, how do I end it? Like, how do I end it? Where's the arc?
The end? Yeah.
Where's the arc? Like, what's the resolution? What happens? And it's because the resolution's it's not that moment is about me and the guy. It's that we open it, and that moment is juxtaposed to the end by my relationship to myself.
Yeah. Trusting yourself.
And so at the beginning of the story, I'm a different person than at the end. And the guy ends up not being part of that journey, really. But he was a witness.
Because it's really funny how without this conversation, so before we started this conversation, I didn't like the end of the story because I felt that actually you were being a bit harsh in not replying to him. And I didn't like the sass. And I was like, really? So yes, he sent you a message to say, oh, I'll be friends, I just want this. And I think a part of me was like, maybe she's reading this, interpreting it that way. But then isn't it fascinating how context is everything? Because the detail you gave now in this conversation as part of this podcast about how you felt about him being quite aggressive and about him being quite controlling, then it makes more sense. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, definitely not to have replied, and you trusted that gut. And it just shows you how important this podcast is, actually, because for context, it helps draw out a bit more detail.
I'm also just always curious, like how people interpret like things, because that's the other thing. Like people tell stories and it's like you interpret things in different ways, and some of it's probably in the telling, and then in like lack of detail, or some of it's in your own personal experience.
I wanted to ask about your writing process because I love your stories.
Yeah.
And I think like the first time I saw you on stage, like back in 2018, I was like, you were like my role model for storytelling from the beginning. And I'm like, I want to be like her because you feel like always so confident, and the pace of your stories are always like calm. You're not like rushing their stories, and it feels like you are always in control. Like, how do you got there? Like to this place of telling stories in this way of, do you memorize the story? Do you write them because you're a writer and then you tell them?
When I first started storytelling, I used to write it and think about it like that. But after I did it a few times, I got to a point where I do the whole thing orally. Like I never write down anything. And so I just, what I usually do is like, I have a story in my head, I practice it and time myself. And honestly, usually it's 30 minutes. Yeah, imagine me telling that story for 30 minutes.
Weirdly, I think I love it because I think I would have got the detail because you're all about detail.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, you end up, that's the beauty. I actually love getting from 30, because I've edited the podcast a little bit this season, and I love that. I love taking whatever and then getting it down, because then you have to cut all the fluff. So that's really the fun part. It's the fun part is you're just like cutting the repetition. You're cutting the stuff that doesn't matter, and you're picking the details that really do matter.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, in the story, I can't think of a moment where the details really great. But anyways, but yeah, so I practice out loud, and I won't tell a story unless I can structure it well. And so that's why in some ways I don't tell that many stories, because I want it to have some emotional resonance. Although like my con artist story doesn't really have that, but I want it to have some emotional resonance, and I want it to have a change, and I want it to have an arc. So much of the work is figuring out the end versus the beginning. And this one's not totally perfect, but I still like it. I don't know. Like there is by the end, you know that there has been something that has happened over the story. And what's interesting in this story structurally, let's say, is it's not exactly what you might expect in the beginning. You might expect it to have to do with the guy, but it's about me.
Sure, that's right.
And so I think playing with expectations is always good. Listening back is interesting because there's times where I can hear my pacing, and I can hear almost moments where I'm making jokes. And I don't plan jokes at all. And I don't plan moments of funniness. Sometimes I say things that I'm convinced are serious and the audience laughs. But once you do it enough times, you get comfortable on stage in a way that you can play with the audience energy. And so that makes a difference. And I think that night too, the audience was giving me not always what I expected, but they were giving me a reaction. So then you pause and you try different things. But yeah, I talk out loud, and I talk out loud a lot to practice. And I think about it. I think about what needs to be told to tell this story and what I can cut out.
And with you, Cristian, how do you approach your style of telling a story on stage? Is it similar or is it different?
Yeah, I think I'm still like a baby storyteller. I like to write my stories first. I always write them because that downloads everything from my head. I want to remember what happened. When I write, I know how emotionally connected I am. But I think I have trouble finding the arc. Liz has this concept of minding the story, which is I start thinking about the story and what this story is actually about, because there's the surface of the story, but what is the deep meaning of the story is different. So I started thinking about, I can tell the story about my dad this way, or my brother this other way. It's not about the family, it's about me, and it's about the moment or whatever, the conflict. So I spent like a week or two thinking about the story and just like changing it and moving it. And then I sit down and I write it. And then once it's written, paper, I start cutting and editing and deleting stuff. But Liz actually helped me a lot in the beginning to edit my stories, to cut them down because my stories were too long or with too many contexts. Sometimes we have this of trying to justify our actions or whatever. The story is just facts. It's just, you have to state the facts and how are you feeling internally, basically, and how those facts are touching you. Also, I had at the beginning a lot of trying to bring a lesson that I reducing that from my story. Not every story needs a lesson. And the last one I told you was like, I caught the story in the middle. It was like, that's it. That's everything I'm giving you. So I'm trying to play more, but of course, time, practice, it gives you the confidence to play with the story. I don't memorize my story any longer. Like sometimes I go on stage and improvise. Like I have the structure, the skeleton of the story, and then I just go with whatever comes on stage. And I like that a lot because it gives me more flexibility. I feel more playful with the story. I can be more reactive to the audience reactions as well and to adapt to that. Rigidity is not good for sharing your stories.
I think that kind of unites both your stories for me as an audience member, and maybe this is the same with every storyteller, but I would argue that having a direct emotional connection to something that is important to you, I think really does help in how you can connect to an audience. And I think this story, Liz, for me was initially started off a bit frivolous. And I was like, where is this really going to go? But I actually think it's beautifully told in the sense of actually it neatly tells the story of your sobriety, but without actually talking about your sobriety. And that's which allows for lingering questions and us for able to do that deep dive. But I think in Cristian, with your HIV story, like for you, that was a really important story to talk about, but also you told it so beautifully with the emotion that you needed to tell because it was so personal to you. And I think that's where, for me, where a story becomes like a 5-star experience for an audience member is when you can see that there's a genuine connection to your emotional feelings about how you are and who you are. Liz, we always ask all our storytellers this important question. What did it mean to you revisiting your story today?
I actually enjoyed it. I honestly, at the very beginning of this, I was like, fuck, I don't want to be in the... I don't know. The thing is, I like the stage. I like the eyes on me, but I also don't. It's weird. I felt weirdly almost emotional listening to this story today, maybe because I was able to be... Because there was time from the actual event, time from telling all of these things. I was talking with somebody and I talked about my sobriety date, which is something I don't really even think about ever. And it just so randomly came up. And I feel very resolved on all of this stuff. I'm married now. I've been sober for 17 years. I feel like I haven't, I don't know, all this stuff feels so far from me. And yet it was such a powerful and then long period of my life. So I don't know, like thinking of all those moments there was like a nostalgia and I've grown up a lot in the last 20 years. The beginning of that story is 20 years ago. And I'm a middle-aged adult. I'm mid-40s now. That's crazy. But life, I'm so changed and I'm so the same person too. It's so wild. I think perhaps because I'm feeling like today is a day to celebrate my past and my sobriety for me already. I already felt that when I got here and now I'm just feeling, I was ranting before about not like what internal work is not celebrated externally really. And so you gotta hype yourself up. You gotta pause for the audience applauses and
absolutely. You go, girl.
And so now you guys had to talk to me about it for a while.
We love that.
Oh my God. That's it for this episode and season of What Lingers.
Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And also follow us on Instagram at Storytelling Lisboa to keep up to date and news of what happens next with the podcast.
What Lingers is a podcast from the team behind Storytelling Lisboa and is produced by Jonny Bunyan.
Thank you so much for listening. And from all of us, bye.
Bye.